100,000 cold cases in the United States. They won't be solved with CODIS alone. This case is a particularly savage crime, a very sad crime, and this moniker of Septic Tank Sam, it comes from the fact that this man was tortured and beaten and murdered, and then he was actually hidden in a septic tank, probably to avoid discovery.
Sanderson was found wrapped in a bedsheet, tied with a nylon rope, and put in a septic tank at an abandoned farm. RCMP say he had been shot several times, burned with a blowtorch and cigarettes, beaten and sexually mutilated.
I found the body and it was not pretty.
I think they spent over $1 million Canadian throughout the course of their investigation, trying literally everything, which I think is great that they were willing to go all out to try to get this gentleman identified.
Dental record searches, forensic sketches, just exhausting every possibility that they could exhaust. And ultimately even came to the speculation that he may be not from Canada. Maybe he was a transient worker, someone passing through, and just quite literally not identifiable. When we did the work eventually to identify who he was, we discovered that he was First Nation and from Canada. Apparently he had been part of the 60s Scoop, which was a program in Canada at the time that they would take Indigenous kids and adopt them out to white families.
Sanderson had a hard life. Born in Manitoba, he was separated from his family during the 60s Scoop and put into foster care. The last time his family heard from Sanderson was in 1977 when he was going to visit his younger brother in Calgary. Sadly, he never showed up.
The DNA was super contaminated. As you can imagine, if someone is hidden in a septic tank for years and years, the DNA absorbs a lot of that not human bacteria. And so we had to go through several different methods before we were able to get clean enough DNA to sequence.
We've built tools to kind of tease apart the human DNA from the non-human DNA. And so being able to filter out, what is human versus non-human is one way to do that. And that can be done in the laboratory, and that can also be done on the software side post-testing. There are other things that happen though when you have this kind of like contamination and things that can sometimes just impede a reaction. And it's everything from chemical contaminants that need to be disassociated with the DNA. It could be damaged DNA that is a result of exposure to these things that we then have to apply some kind of repair process to. So there's a lot of little things that can either drown out or just impede a reaction, and we have to address those things. When we talk about bacterial contamination, for example, we're not talking about like a little bit of bacteria in there. We're talking about scenarios where we take in DNA extracts for which perhaps 1% or less of that DNA could be human. And so there's so much non-human DNA there that it just becomes imperative, again, just to be cost effective and also to be able to make the assay work, to be able to associate just the part that's human with the following steps that'll be used to do DNA testing.
So Septic Tank Sam was one of the first cases that Canada actually used this type of advanced testing on to try to facilitate identification.
Working in Canada is a little different than working here in the States. We've had a very great working relationship with the Toronto Police Service and the RCMP and other folks. In Canada, at the national level, the RCMP has lots of additional privacy and kind of security policies that they want to enforce and use to maintain a certain process around their casework. And so one of the great things at Othram is that we do all the work in-house, end-to-end evidence through the delivery of investigative leads. And we're able to fine-tune that process. And we've done that in the States. Like I said, there are some agencies that have additional requirements or just different requirements. And so it was a little different working in Canada. But because we were able to build the custom process that suits their needs, it's actually, I think, worked to our advantage. And now we're working, a whole bunch of cases in Canada.
And I think it was, 3 or 4 months worth of work on our end compared to decades on their end and millions spent, that we were able to return a full profile that could then be used to identify who this victim was.
Othram was able to solve it for less than $5,000, and I think that shows the power of what we're able to do. Even though we had to iterate on our methods and we had to perform several steps of cleaning the DNA or enriching human DNA versus bacterial DNA that was in there, we still spent less than $5,000 to solve this case. And I think that shows that for very little money in comparison to what is being spent in these investigations, Othram can provide their expertise and lead to a profile and answers that would not otherwise be obtained by any other method.
For decades, his name was as mysterious as his murder. But after over 40 years of being called Septic Tank Sam, based only on where his body was gruesomely discovered, RCMP have a name. Thanks to DNA testing, they know it is Gordon Edwin Sanderson, or Gordy for short, and they're hoping the next step is finding out who did it.
If you want to learn more, come to DNAsolves.com, DNASOLVES.com. There's cases that need funding support. You can donate your DNA to help solve the next crime, or you can share some of the stories that we've announced with law enforcement.